thank you so much for joining us, AG. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
So could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like why this topic is of relevance to you, like why it's interesting, why you do what you do?
Yeah, for sure. I'm extremely passionate about this topic. I am nearly 50, and I grew up in a very religious, but kind of like pre-GOP religious context, like in a Methodist church that wasn't super evangelical or anything like that in my childhood. My family, very religious, kind of like religion as identity type of setting. Graduated from high school, went to the military for 4 years, and then went to Bible college for 4 years. Went from Bible college to seminary to study counseling, but specifically chose seminary for religious reasons, obviously. And during that process of seminary, I had been married and was getting divorced kind of at the end of my seminary time. And I think it was a lot of things kind of came to the head, to a head during that time. And I reflected on my life and priorities and decided to clean things up a little bit. And it became very clear that religion was something that was not my priority, even though I'd lived almost 30 years of my life pursuing it, 10 years of my life, 12 years of my life as an adult pursuing religious things. And I just decided that that was something I had to move away from.
What brought you to that point that you felt that you needed to move away from it?
I'm really into music. And there's always been, as I've gone through the process, like in the last 20 years of moving away from religion, I'll hear a song and think back to, like an old song, like an REM's Losing My Religion for like a really obvious pick. Like I heard that song when it was out and it always stuck with me for some reason. And I never gave it a lot of, introspection to think, why is this important? Why does it sound so right? But there's probably 5 or 6 songs like that that I will hear now, or I've heard in the last 10, 20 years from this side of things and think, oh, that was something that kind of planted a seed, or like resonated with me in a way that I wasn't aware of, but it felt right to hear whatever, some kind of religious doubt or questioning, or like there's another option available and these people are singing about it. Like that always meant a lot to me.
At the time that you were going through seminary and having some of these doubts, what was that like? Like, were you able to express those, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I feel like most people I talk to are so isolated in the process. My best friend still to this day and I kind of were in parallel. I think, maybe we definitely helped each other, not deliberately, but just in our conversations and the things that each of us would talk about. And we were both really probing. We have probing minds anyways. And then the combination of those, both of us working together in this, we walked through it together, pretty much parallel. Like we'd kind of work in, like one of us would take it this far and then the other one would take it this far. And it's been awesome, like to walk through it with someone.
Yeah. What a gift to have someone that can take it a little bit further than what you're comfortable with at that time, but that kind of mentor you up there too, and you can do the same to them.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
What about go ahead.
I was just going to say, otherwise, the seminary I went to was more liberal probably than most with that title. So the idea of doubt, to their credit, like the idea of doubt and like questioning and searching was part of that program. And I credit that program with probably what got the ball rolling to look a little deeper. It was a counseling program, so that's probably should be par for the course anyways, but in a religious context, I wouldn't think that would always be the case. So yeah, I think the professors I had, the relationships that I had with those professors probably helped it along as well.
Mm, that's great. What about relationally outside of the seminary?
Um, Not a ton. Like I didn't have a ton of interaction with anybody else. I definitely kept it a secret from my family. I have a really large family,
Mhm.
5 older siblings. My parents, everybody's still around. My parents are still together, um, still function as a unit for the most part. And I'm the only one who's gone down this road. It's not a secret at this point, but in the process when it all started, like it was probably 5 or 8 years before they knew anything was happening with me, I
Wow.
think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I didn't have a ton of other uh, relationships where this was a part or discussion.
Okay. Wow. So there's about 5 or 8 years where your family didn't really know where you were at.
I think so. I mean, maybe they have more insight than I give them credit for, and they suspected or thought something was happening. But I lived a long ways away. Like they're
Mhm.
in Wyoming, and I was on the West Coast. We, so we didn't have constant interaction, so they weren't able to see. You know, they saw what I wanted them to see, basically. So.
Yeah. So what became that bridge between kind of walking that line of your family not quite knowing where you were at, or kind of allowing them to see what you wanted them to see, and then fully crossing it to just own who you are and what you're about?
You know, I only bridged it really with my dad.
Hmm.
Uh, I think everybody else, for whatever, like, I don't think that I've had the specific, nobody's asked me, like, are you religious anymore? Or why aren't you religious anymore? They know that I'm not because I've had feedback uh, from them, sometimes through my wife, that they'll say things to her or whatever, which I don't really appreciate. Um, but I remember like right at the end, like right when I had finally kind of had the last, it was a struggle for a long time, like probably 4 years of like intensive, really wrestling with it, and like a daily thing, and like journaling and talking to my friend and whatever. And there was this other song by one of my favorite bands that the refrain was, I want to believe, I want to believe, I want to believe.
Mm.
And I'd play that song a million times during the process. And I think primarily because of my family, like I know this is a huge point of, I don't know, foundation for my family. And if I step away from this, then in some ways I'm stepping away from my family. And that was the most difficult part, I think.
Yeah.
And my dad and I went on a long road trip, which is a rare thing to have the opportunity to do as a like 30-year-old or whatever I was. But we went to Alaska together. We were talking about it, and we have a relatively open relationship. Like, and I don't remember how we started talking about it. We were talking about my relationship with religion, and I played him this song, and I remember riding in his truck and just being really tearful about it. And I think he was emotional about it. And I told him, like, I tried so hard. And it's it's still like a powerful, obviously like a powerful moment just to recognize how important it was to me. I don't know, like how difficult it was for me to sever that tie to my family. And I haven't severed my ties to my family, but the religious connection to my family was very difficult to disconnect.
Mm.
And I did try really hard, and I could not do it. Like I couldn't be myself and maintain any authenticity or character and still maintain a religious life. And it was hard.
It's it's so true though that especially in in, I imagine, America. I'm not American, but in Canada as well, there's that sense within the more conservative religious realms that to be part of this family or to be part of this lineage is to be whatever, is to be part of this type of church.
Mm-hmm.
And to just not align with that can feel like distancing yourself from your origin or from your roots. Yeah.
Very much so.
So what's that been like since? You said that was about 20 years ago. And how has that feeling of your identity and your sense of yourself within your family changed or stayed the same?
My personally, like I feel like I've thrived in that 20 years, like in multiple ways. Like I I don't know, like I feel like that was the key to really discovering who I am and having the world be open to what that meant. Like I didn't know what that meant before. Kind of removing the blinders of religion and having that be the guideposts or the, you have to keep it within these boundaries. Those removed, like my life really has opened up and I feel really proud of what I've done in that time. And yeah, like I couldn't be happier with where it's led. And it's not like, I've discovered the true meaning of life or whatever, but maybe because the true meaning of life is just being who I am. Right. That's not a big secret, I don't think, but I don't know what else there would be besides that. Family wise, it's been for the most part a non-topic. I think like I said, everybody knows where I stand by rumor or scuttlebutt or whatever. Like they've had conversations, I assume, that actually I just had that confirmed the other day. Like my sister was like, yeah, we've talked about it. And I don't know how much hand wringing they do about it. I suspect there's a fair amount. I have a wife and 2 kids now. I know that intensified things for them, probably. Knowing that I'm not taking my kids to church and teaching them the whatever, like all the required lessons. My mom still will send like religious-based books, or I don't know, like the Bernstein Bears. Are you familiar with them? They were always awesome books. And then in the last, I don't know when it happened, but they turned and they're very religious now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know that.
So like, I don't know if it's the last decade or what, but the newer books are very religious. So my mom has sent some of those, and I think she sent them a kid's Bible at some point. And I just don't, like, I remove it. Like I don't give it to them. I don't really address it with her. Like I don't say don't do that, just because I think it's harmless to just, it's not the only thing she gives them. So it's not like we don't acknowledge gifts, but remove that part of it, acknowledge the rest of it, and move along. I just learned this very week that my dad is personally hurt by me not being religious. That he takes it as if me rejecting him or rejecting the family, and kind of just now realizing how that's fueled some different whatever kind of low-key conflicts that we've had, or energize some conflicts that we've had, or so that's something that's still ongoing. So it's not over. I mean, I don't think it ever will be over in terms of my relationship with my family. I'm lucky I have 4 older sisters and a very close relationship with one of them, the youngest, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And I'm lucky that she and I can say whatever I need to her, and she gives me feedback and vice versa. And like, I feel like that's a real lifesaver. I'm not totally alone in it. Even if she doesn't see things the same way, she doesn't hold anything against me. And I think she tries to understand. I think, just to add one more point, like one of my frustrations through the last 20 years is that everybody knows where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows how I got here.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's asked, nobody has expressed curiosity. I understand, I think, why that is, but it still doesn't, it's still frustrating. Um, and probably a little bit hurtful, just because understanding is one of our biggest thirsts, right? Like, we want to be understood, and to be, have people draw conclusions about where I am without actually having a conversation about it and have that be good enough, like, that's, I don't know, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. I'm really curious about what you said regarding having the blinders taken off when you're able to own yourself apart from religion directing you of what's appropriate or what you can do and not do. How have you, like, what are you doing now or in the past 10, 15, 20 years that you don't think you would have done or grown into, or ways that you see life that is so different than what you would have ever been able to do if you had continued on where you were at before?
That's a great question. Honestly, like, I think on, as a landscape,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think my life looks much different than it would have, just in terms of what I do with my daily life, what I do with my career. Um, but in terms of what I saw or sought out after the blinders were removed, like, in my upbringing, it was a very enclosed bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And the things outside the secular world, that was always like, that's a secular thing, that's a secular thing. It was always a separation between us and them, and the things that were okay for me and the things that were not okay for me. And music was kind of a big part of that. Like, I went through a few, uh, like, purges of my music collection. Like, oh, I've gotten this secular music, I need to get rid of it and tear this cassette tape apart or whatever. Like, all these dramatic actions that I feel like a lot of people did in their religious life. So that was a big thing, was like kind of removing that secular religious boundary and being like, there's nothing that's actually secular. Like, things are just things. Like, they don't have a title. And I mean, I think that's probably the most valuable thing I've done. And that, I mean, it's been a long time since that kind of happened, but seeing how that label limited everything else or degraded it, really, like, to a, it's not worthy, or it's tainted, or it's, I mean, my family was never like, oh, that's evil and the devil, like, they don't have that language. I mean, yeah, I would hear it sometimes, but not like actively, but more just like, it's not, it's not Christian, so it's not okay. um so just expanding kind of my horizons of what I was open to viewing and hearing and seeing and experiencing, really, without a veneer, of, well, this is reaching outside of what I'm supposed to be. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess, like, I haven't really ventured into like a lot of drug experimentation or anything like that, or I don't know. I don't, I'm not spiritual at all. Like, I don't identify with, like, I feel like just in the things that I see of people that have come out of Christianity, like, spirituality is still important to them in some way, and they find a different way to express it. That's not me. Like, so I haven't explored a lot that way. But I feel like just recognizing that my duty as a human, I feel like, hasn't really changed. Like, I just was talking to somebody the other day about, some of this stuff, and I remember Jesus' words. I don't remember if it was Jesus' words. I don't know. Like, it's been a long time. But like, do justice, love mercy, and be humble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are not religious constructs. Like, those are things that are valuable as a human being. And I feel like I was talking about them the other day in the context of our current political climate in the U.S. and how the Christian evangelicals back Trump, and I'm like, he is at 180 degrees opposite of all three of those things. And the fact that an entire movement can ignore that for the sake of political gain or whatever it is, like, is just baffling to me. I don't know. That's a long ways from your question, but
no, I think that's right on track with my question. Yeah. What about your work as a therapist? How has this impacted your work, or do you think it influences the way that you work with your clients?
I have about half and half clients who come from a specifically identified religious context that they're leaving,
Mm-hmm.
and clients that isn't true for. I feel like the backdrop of, like, all my clients are Americans, right? So this backdrop of living in a quote unquote Christian culture impacts everybody. And so I think it's important to unpack that a little bit when that, to me, appears to be something that's impacting someone. Like, I'm totally willing to unpack that. I don't think I see anybody who is explicitly religious, so it's not like it's pretty on thin ice or anything to address things that way. But it's really given me a lot of passion. Like, this topic really, like, if I could fill my caseload with 100% people from seculartherapy.com or whatever, like, if I could have, like, I would be, I'm already happy with my work, but I would be like over the top, because I love working with people who are sorting things out and watching how that is working for them, and how, kind of like I described, like how their lives open up and how their eyes, like the blinders kind of come off incrementally a lot of times. But and I think it's a transferable what would you call it, like a worldview. Like, I feel like everybody who's come to therapy has presuppositions about how life is supposed to be and how it's supposed to be lived. And often the reasons that they're having whatever issues happening that bring them to therapy is because those things aren't working.
Mm-hmm.
And so deconstruction has always kind of been the backdrop, or kind of the bottom line of like what I hope to do with people. And I've always used this image. I don't know if I stole it from somebody or if it's a common description. I think it is probably a common description, but like what I tell people usually very early on, like what I hope to do with people is take the house that is your life and take it apart. Take off the walls, take out the studs, take out the joists, and lay it all out and decide what you decide has value. I don't decide, like you decide, right. But that's what I'm here for, is to help lay it out and inspect it and see if it has rot and needs to be tossed, and see if it has outworn, it's just worn out and is too old to be any good. And then reconstruct it with what's left, and then the new stuff that you're choosing for yourself. I think that maybe without knowing it, my deconstruction and reconstruction process I've just overlaid that onto my work. So maybe it's 100% informed how I work with people.
Well, I think we do our best work when there's some aspect of ourselves that we're finding in the other person, as long as we've done our own work before that. But right. Yeah, when I feel the most connected and when I feel that I do my best work is when I connect. There's something from my own story that connects in a healthy way, not in a projection way, but in a healthy way, and enables that unique space for the other person to do that work.
Yeah,
I really like that metaphor of the house, and I like how it's not taking a match to the house and burning it all down, but instead actually deconstructing it, because that's an intentional meditative action to do, And then also saying it's not necessarily all unusable. You know, there's parts of the house that are good, that are actually healthy. There's things that you can still learn from your past, or maybe someone, even if you don't agree with necessarily their religious stance, they've still taught you great values in life, or you can still learn from different areas. But that autonomy to pick and choose, that you don't have to take everything. You can also go and buy new material and add it to the old as well. Yeah. And I think that's a great metaphor. I'm going to use that.
Okay. I think part of it too, I just thought of, like, there might be a stud in the, like a corner of the room, whatever, that you're deconstructing, that has a label on it that, like the do justice, love mercy, and be humble. Like, that has a very, to me, that has a very religious connotation to it. And sometimes I can't take that. Like, I have to use different words or frame it a different way. But it's still an important component, right? Like, those are things that are very important to me. And I think with those specific words, I'm okay with them, because I can see their bigger definition. And so sometimes you have to relabel things. Like, you have to say, yeah, it's been this forever, but that's not the source, right? Like, that label isn't coming from the primary source of where those things come from. It's from something bigger. So you just got, I don't know, recontextualize or reframe or whatever.
Yeah, totally. All right.
And also the foundation. Like, you can't change the foundation necessarily. Like, I feel like the foundation in my analogy is the thing is history. Like, you can't change the past,
right?
But can build a different way on top of the past.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, thank you so much for sharing with us. You have so many amazing things to say, and I'm really thankful that you were open to doing this. Any last words of advice for people who are leaving, are deconstructing, are rethinking?
Don't rush it. I don't know, like, I feel like, in my observation, people that are coming from an extremely, like, restrictive or very, very conservative religious context can swing just as far on the other side. And that's probably fine. Like, I'm not judging that, but just be aware of, like, all right, well, I was at this point in the trajectory, maybe just for the sake of poetry, it's right that you swing all the way over, just to even things out. And then you're going to settle someplace in the middle. But nothing is final, I think, is maybe what I would say. Like, because you're here today and you're deciding that, okay, I can branch out and listen to secular music, well, that's not final. Maybe someday you'll want to listen to religious music again. I haven't. But that doesn't mean the same thing, is going to be true for you. But just, I feel like religious upbringing and religious context just make everything seem so final. Like, it all comes down to eternity and what that looks like. And that's just not how life works. Like, nothing has to be final unless you decide it's going to be final. And then later you can decide it's not final. Like, that's, I guess, my point is that don't get stuck at any certain point thinking, well, here I am now. Yeah. And that's it. Like, you can keep the train moving as much as you want to keep it moving, or stop it and wait for a while and then move it later. Like, there's no rules.
Great. I will stop our conversation there. And if anyone wants to contact AG, I'll put his website information in the comments. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're doing awesome.